And we're live, folks.
We want to give a big thank you to last week's guest and friend, Andy Luck of Star Wars Autograph Universe, for being on our show last week. You're a busy man, and we appreciate you taking the time to be on our show. We can't wait to have you on again. Tonight we have David Rowaan, who is a huge Ottawa Senators fan, and one of, if not resident gurus when it comes to soccer. And you can find a lot of his soccer tweeting on Twitter. So without further ado, Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
So it's obviously clearly enjoys the Belle of Ontario, being a Sens fan, and us being located in Toronto. But quick question for you: when did you start collecting cards and PCing the Sens?
Oh, collecting cards was a childhood thing. Probably 8 or 9. My brother and I just kind of collected whatever we could afford a few packs of here and there. Anytime I got forced to go to the doctor or something, I could convince my parents to buy me a pack afterwards or two. But early on, a lot of Victory, early 2000s era stuff then, and not really collecting Sens, because as a kid, I didn't know about the world. I didn't know really about like hobby shops or anything. I bought packs at a comic book store.
Oh yeah.
So it was just kind of whatever I got was what I got, and the bulk of it was worthless junk in the long run, but that was kind of our collecting. And then I came back into it probably towards the tail end of university. And that's when I actually started like, okay, I don't want to just amass quantity. I want to actually focus in on a lot of things. So I started out kind of collecting around the 2005 to 2007 era of the Sens.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of Heatley, Spezza, Alfredson, Fisher, that generation of guys. And then it's just kind of morphed from there into the newer guys and whatever is nice looking.
So leading into that, is there any specific players you're PCing currently from the Sens?
Yeah, so I've taken a bit back on the Sens PC. I've focused on Thomas Chabot, really trying to drill into his rookie year.
Oh, nice.
So it's the most focused PC I've ever done, where I'm like, okay, I want to try to chase one of every rookie year card with the serial numbering or a print run higher than 10. I'm under 20 cards remaining, and they're all pretty painful. Thankfully, he was a late season debut, so like he's not in Artifacts and a couple of the other early ones, so it's not a 300 card PC to try to do. It's a little bit smaller, but he's still in the Cup and SPA and Ice and the important ones at least.
Nice. So now that, and this is not, right now we're in the midst of a pandemic. It's still ongoing. How has the pandemic affected your collecting habits, if any?
Obviously it's removed going to the Toronto Sports Card Expo, which was usually a bigger opportunity, because I collect the Sens, but I live in Niagara. So it's a bit of a odd market in that the hobby shops are happy to sell me Sens when they get them, but they don't really, there's not a whole lot there. So the expo was always an opportunity to kind of interact with dealers from the eastern half of the province and people who are actually buying and selling the same things I'm buying and selling. But otherwise, I've done a lot more ComC this year because I've been at home. So buying and flipping and doing all that on a coffee break is just a little bit of fun to pass the time. Other than that, I don't think a whole lot has changed. I had a child in the last year, so I've sold a little bit more than I've bought, trying to balance the budget a little bit more than I did in previous years. But yeah, it's been pretty steady.
We're not here to talk about hockey, so I wanted to talk about, I'm a Leafs fan, so I really can't let you talk too long about the Senators. Just saying. That's all I got to say. But I'll give you this. I like Chabot. I have a lot of respect for that kid. But as a Leafs fan, I might gonna get kicked for someone telling me that. Anyways, I'm sure someone will remind me that I'm a Leafs fan. So I want to pivot to your love of footy or soccer. So when did you start watching the Euro Premier Leagues?
I've as long as it's been on my TV. So I grew up in rural Ottawa Valley where there was only an antenna. So probably not until 13, 14 that we actually had like a satellite dish and could get Sportsnet to watch an actual like Manchester United or Chelsea or any of those teams playing. But like really by late high school into college, when I should have been doing more important things, I was watching as much soccer as I could possibly get into.
So it's funny because I'm a Liverpool fan, and I know we talked yesterday. You're not as heavily invested in Manchester United, so there's another team we're at odds with. So Leafs and then Manchester United. We probably should stop there. You might leave the podcast. So we know you're high on Alphonso Davies. Can you give us a little bit more direction on why that is and how that came to be?
Yeah, I mean, in my adult life, I kind of moved away from being super like Premier League is it, and I don't care about that MLS league. It's terrible. I can't watch that. And I actually spent a few years trying to make a career of being a writer and covering MLS and being really plugged into Canadian soccer. So they're just getting to know a bunch of the guys even through that. But the challenge was if you wanted to collect a Canadian soccer player, like they might get in the MLS set every couple of years or something. Like I could make an exhaustive PC of a Canadian soccer player and maybe get to 10 cards. And like that's for someone like Patrice Bernier, who played a lot of MLS years and was in a lot of products, relatively speaking. So the big thing with Davies was it's the first Canadian really who didn't go off to represent another country who's showing up in these kind of more premium products. So, I mean, in the next year, he's going to be in Champions League Museum and Champions League Chrome. And if they do Sapphire again, like he's in these products where there was never a Canadian to collect before. So it's been cool to chase him. And then his prices blew up this year when he became an absolute star. So it's been a different challenge because when you collect Ottawa Senators, even the best Senators player is not expensive in the world of sports cards. Like my nicest Thomas Chabot card might have cost me $300. Whereas now it's like, oh, a Don Ross Hollow of Davies you want $300 for it. So it's a bit of a different ecosystem to get used to.
That's true. And that's a really good point about being a player PC completionist for Canadian soccer players. So you would actually get a very high run rate on completing it. So there's that too. So there's an advantage to that. I'm also a fan of Alphonso Davies, and we learned yesterday, and actually I'm surprised I didn't know this because I'm actually on TikTok, that he had a very, very active TikTok presence. I actually, after we chatted yesterday, David, I watched I don't know how many at least a half hour of his TikToks. They're actually funny. I think he's hilarious, and it adds to his flavor of being a player. And I'm kind of glad. Like nowadays, the players have a lot of like they really culturally figure out themselves through TikTok and other social media, so everyone loves him for that reason, and that's probably going to help his career in terms of collectability. But going back to Alphonso Davies and related to Canadian soccer's, are we positioned to cultivate more talent on the world stage, do you figure?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, and the hockey people might not love me saying this, soccer is our biggest participation sport. So even though our system is loaded with flaws, you're almost accidentally due to produce a few good players every now and then. And now we have the 3 MLS teams. We have an 8-team professional league in Canada that, it's the CFL soccer equivalent. It's small, but it's ours. So it's opening up this pathway for, if you are a talented 14 or 15-year-old, you don't have to look at packing your bags and heading overseas to hopefully find a chance to play in Europe, because hopefully you have grandparents with a passport in a country or something where you can get eligibility. So as we close those gaps, the hope would be that, the next Alphonso Davies doesn't go play some other sport. He stays in soccer, and he can stay in Canada and develop. And that way you don't have these kids who leave Canada super young. So it's a bit of an obscure example to non-soccer fans, but Jonathan de Guzman, Canadian-born, but left for the Netherlands at 12 and played up until his early 20s, I think was when he left the Netherlands for England and Spain and a few other stops. He elected to play for them internationally because his formative years were spent there, and it makes sense. And Canadian fans don't love it, but hopefully we're getting to a point where our Canadians who are actually good stay and play for Canada. And right now, like, there's a couple who are on the cusp of being in the Premier League. The first place team in France, their starting center forward is Canadian. Like, there's a few other guys who aren't that far behind Davies.
Do we have the right positioning here in Canada from a facilities perspective and training to make these guys stars, or is that like a lot of them probably go over because of that mentality, right? They have their own soccer academies or football academies overseas. How is Canada positioned from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we have the infrastructure, but similar to hockey, it's a very expensive infrastructure in Canada. Like, if you want to pay for private coaching and get those extra hours a week, the biggest challenge we'll always face is you can't play soccer 12 months of a year here. Like, the kids in South America are playing nonstop all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's not something we can't overcome. But again, like, there's not a lot of indoor facilities yet, so soccer isn't a year-round thing. And at a certain point, just for exposure, guys are going to go, okay, I need to get on the biggest stage possible, and that just isn't Canada. But that's the same for young Americans. If they get the chance to go over to Germany or Spain or England, they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Dave, do you foresee that, and I'll use Alphonso Davies as an example, do you foresee that Canada is going to have enough young talent coming up that maybe in the next decade or so we can challenge for a spot in the World Cup?
Well, a bit of an asterisk on that is that North America is hosting in 2026, and Canada will have games in 3 of our cities. It's not confirmed yet whether that means we get an automatic spot.
Okay.
Because FIFA has never done 3 hosts before. But when they did Korea and Japan was the first time they did 2 hosts. Both Korea and Japan got spots. So the assumption is we're going to get into 2026 automatically, which would be around the peak window for a guy like Davies, for Jonathan David, who's at Lille in France, and a few other of the current generation. So, I mean, hopefully we're respectable. Hopefully we're not the host who shows up, scores 1 goal, and goes home. Because the last time Canada went to a World Cup, the only time Canada went to a World Cup, we scored 0 goals and we went home.
Touche. Good point. Well, hopefully in 2026 we can have a fairly talented team to at least make some noise. At least I'm hoping. So, how has the recent interest and rise in the soccer market translated for you personally?
I mean, it's translated into a profitable year at the
there you go.
level. Like, it's everything that I've owned has gone up exponentially. Obviously, it's come with trade-offs in terms of access to product and what's available. I used to be able to go to local shops and they would pretty much beg me to take whatever soccer was sitting on their shelf from 2 years ago because nobody else had really been interested in opening it. Those days are gone.
Right.
Even people who don't know soccer know that there's money to be made there, and know that there's like the current rookie class in this year between Ansu Fati and Erling Haaland are both, they're money in the bank for people getting them out of products this year. So there's a lot of interest coming in from people who just wouldn't naturally be soccer fans. And so I haven't gotten a drop from the Topps website in a long time because it's just, it's so much more competitive than it used to be. And I think we've also seen it's really moved in the print on demand Topps Now direction where, I mean, even the first couple Davies Bundesliga ones are 3-digit print runs, and then they jump up to nearly 10,000 card print runs. And so it's the number of eyeballs that are on everything where it's just, the demand is up. I assume this year, kind of with the 2021 products, we'll see a correction in supply to try to match that. There's no reason why Topps can't turn up the print run.
What's funny is talking about print runs back in the early days. Just a quick segue is like those out of 10,000 wasn't a bad thing back then. Remember, like some of the cards we'd have out of 10,000 back in the day. So nowadays we're kind of spoiled with the whole print run to 99 and 10 and whatnot. Anyways, that was a quick segue. Well, I'll let you get back to your point there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of those things that as the market shakes out, we might look at a print run on a Topps Now rookie where it's like, 14,000, that's too many.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about millions of potential collectors in the soccer fandom. Like it is truly global. So is 14,000 too many? Probably not in the long run if that player goes on to actually be anything that people are interested in. Like if you look at what people are paying for a Ronaldo or a Messi, just, a World Cup Prism base. And not even in the summer when the prices went really crazy, but they've corrected. They're still $60 to $80 for a raw base card.
Right.
And
right.
You can't tell me there's not tens of thousands of those that are in the world. But there's still, the demand outweighs.
Some pundits are saying that, soccer is now 4th place and they've pushed hockey to 5th place. That being said, with soccer being in the top 4 for some advocates, do you foresee at some point that there's going to be a correction in terms of soccer? Like, do you think it'll come back down? Or do you think the momentum with soccer will remain where it is today, if not more?
Yeah, so I think what you'll see is correction on specific items in the line. I think as more people come in and get more educated. So I'll pick on the example of prisms from the summer.
Sure.
So for basketball collectors and other sports, the prism is kind of a high value item, and the first prism is significant wherever it happens in their career. And I think that got carried into soccer, and then a few people with large followings sort of put their weight behind it, and we saw Ronaldo and Messi and Kylian Mbappe's prisms all go crazy. None of them are rookie cards, none of them are rare, none of them are hard to find, but they went, as the kids say, to the moon back in the summer months. And then they corrected as just that the hype machine kind of moved away from them, and I think people started to see, okay, there's nothing special about that Ronaldo or that Messi. They have cards in 2 World Cups before that. They're not Prism, but they're still earlier World Cups. They have a decade of a playing career before that card came out. There's a ton of other options to look at. So I think we'll see specific things kind of spike and then level. But the overall trend, as long as the sports card sector stays healthy, soccer, I think, is only going to continue to grow in its market share.
Yeah.
I think there'll be big jumps when you have the major international competitions. And we haven't seen one of those since soccer got popular. So if Euros go forward this summer, and like we don't know what that's going to do to the market. Like it's completely unprecedented because that's just on a scale that you don't otherwise see soccer viewership
Yep.
outside of the World Cup years. And then, I mean, we've got a World Cup in the later half of 2022, so just over a year down the road, right? It's not that far off before they're playing in Qatar.
Mhm.
So again, if it might spike for Euros and then level a little, and then spike again for the World Cup and then level a little, but the overall trend line I can only see going up, unless for some reason the hobby in a broader sense just retreats and tanks.
No, valid points. Valid points. So what are your thoughts on investing like in the early Panini stickers? Because I know some people consider those to be the true rookies. What are your thoughts about that, like in North America versus Europe?
Yeah, so I consider myself a card collector, not a sticker collector.
Okay, that's good.
And that's a choice I've made, and it's honestly because there's so much knowledge that you need to gain to be well versed in your cards.
Mm-hmm.
To add stickers on top of that was just a challenge that I haven't really undertaken at this point. I find that there's certainly certain sticker products that there's a lot of value and appeal in them, and some of that has to do with their condition sensitive product. They were treated as a different level of collectible when they came out, so there's not the same. If you go back to those 2004 World Cup or 2008 World Cups, where people, they were treated as a kid's product, they weren't really collected and preserved and stored in the same way that you would think. So there's those early Ronaldos and Messis in 9s and 10s are going to have value because they're rare. But when you look at the more modern guys, if you're looking at like Holland's first sticker, there are guys who are sitting on thousands of them.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Right, you can still buy those boxes. You can still find that sticker in packs if you wanted. The thing with stickers is they are supply to demand. Like they'll keep pumping those through the printing press because that's a money-making machine for Panini. There's no scarcity there. Again, a 10 is still hard to come by because the sticker is flimsy and the corners go away no problem. So in excellent condition graded copies, you'll find value. But for every Holland sticker that might go up to a decent return, most others, you just won't see a lot of value in the modern sets.
Yeah, no, to your point, that's a good point because I didn't realize back in the day when those first stickers came out, people probably stuck them into, like, actually used them as stickers and stuck them into those books. Whereas nowadays, today, to your point, anybody could buy tens and thousands of the Hollands and Mbappes and just hang on to them, not stick them anywhere, and just sit on those. So yeah, that's a very valid point. Thanks.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're in the market for one of their rookies and the cards have kind of gone out of your budget, then the sticker's kind of that alternate product for people. And you could look at the same as Match Attax, which is another for the kids type product, where it's like, yeah, no matter what their career looks like, it's never going to be your $1,000 card, but you may still buy it at 10 and have it go up to 100, or it may just be you wanted to collect that player, and this was the way to kind of get into the market when they've already kind of gone up beyond your budget.
Right.
No, it's interesting. So you're talking about stickers. I just had a memory when I was a child. I used to collect cards, but I used to collect the stickers as well, and I used to make my own cards out of them. So I would stick them on cardboard, cut them out, and create. And I still have them. I show them to my kids, but I used to create them on my own. So like my own cards, right? I like you. I'm also a card collector. Although I do have stickers. Now, this is not soccer related, but I have stickers of like Gretzky and Lemieux. I just can't part from because it's just an emotional attachment. Going to my mom and dad would give me money, and I'd go to the local corner store, and I'd buy like 1 or 2 packs, and I'd go through and make sure I have them in my sticker book. And then, the modern kids don't even stick them in their sticker books. They keep the book and the stickers separately. It's like mind-boggling.
It's an investment now.
Yeah, of course. Even little kids know that. That's crazy. Even my kids know that. Well, obviously they know because of me, but that's besides the point. But going back to cards for a second, though, so that's an interesting take on the Panini stickers. But going back to cards, like what about the Topps UK Futura, Euro exclusive boxes? Like, what are your thoughts on those? They're not Panini; it's a different brand. Now, Panini is also creating. So there's technically 3 players in this market, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, the prominent licenses are held between Topps and Panini right now. The European Federation license was up for bids at the end of last year. We haven't heard what happens with that. So right now, Topps owns the club competitions, so Champions Leagues and Europa League, and Panini owns the national team competitions, so Euro 2020, whatever year it ends up being in, that would be their license. So those are both up for bids. So if those go to one or the other, or they stay the same or shift, that will kind of shape the landscape. But you have a few other kind of people dipping their toes in with either club licenses, which is what you're seeing Futura rely on more heavily. So they've signed licenses with Arsenal and Manchester City and PSG and a couple other clubs. And so they're never going to get to the point where they could likely bid on, say, the Premier League license. That's just too big of a deal for where they are as a company right now. But I think they're looking at carving out just not necessarily a niche market share, but to try to find a foothold in the game. Futura has been around. Like, they're not a brand new brand, but they were a very premium set. Their World Football came in a very fancy box and was limited to high rollers or to breakers. And even at the breakers, it's like you're selling a lot of spots and most people are getting nothing out of it, just because of the number of cards in the case each time. So they've tried to reinvent themselves with their on-demand offerings that they have now. It's interesting. I know a few people who are grabbing their Manchester City card every single week and trying to build a set. The prices are good, but it's, again, how will the market long-term react to these sort of off-brand rookies and off-brand collectible?
So where do you see? So let me ask you this. This is off the beaten path in the sense of the questions we were asking yesterday. So where do you rank Futura, Top, Panini then, in order of preference globally?
Right now, I think because of the licenses that Panini has, because they have the Euros and they have the World Cup license, it's just really hard to beat that. What Topps is doing product-wise with Topps Now and some of their curated on-demand sets is better than what Panini's been doing in the last year. Panini hasn't done much in the last year since kind of they released Chronicles, and they released their regular lineup with Immaculate and a few other things, but there wasn't any innovation from Panini in the last year. But they're going to drop Prism Premier League next week, and it's going to be impossible to get your hands on it, even at $600 a hobby box. And Panini will make their bank, and they'll be happy. And at the end of the day, because they have those licenses, I still think Panini's number one, Topps is number two. Everybody else is a distant third or fourth. And if Upper Deck ever grabs a license again, they used to have MLS. They used to have Manchester United and a couple other things that they did interesting stuff with, but they've drifted out of the soccer conversation entirely. If they come back in, I could see them very easily moving directly to third. But, I mean, after the big two, it's just a huge jump off to other people trying to do things. You get into Futura and DACA, which is an Asian brand, and then you get to real obscure things that most people will probably have never heard of and nobody buys.
What about like, okay, so let me ask you this. So, like you said, those obscure brands, like Futura, is it more popular overseas than here, or or is Panini more popular overseas? And like, where's the market for these brands? Are they niche markets to their own areas?
I think Futura is a little bit. They have a stronger following in the UK. That's where their roots are. That's where most of their products focus. But Panini and Topps are both. I mean, they're obviously strong North American brands in other sports. Panini definitely has a really strong Asian presence in that market. I think Topps is trying to make more inroads there. And where Topps has really thrown a lot of their resources in the last year is a European presence. So if you may get zero customer service from the Topps Twitter account, but you'll probably get some from Topps UK because they're trying really hard to build their brand out in Europe and be a little bit stronger there. And so they have more, like they have offices in Europe. They do shipping and fulfillment from Europe. Their UK store, their Germany store, their Spain store, they're all purchasing product from the US and selling it on their sites. So they're almost like a distributor, but under the Topps name.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not getting distributor markups at least. But it's interesting to see them make that push. I'm not seeing Panini do the same thing, but again, Panini has the right licenses.
Right.
So if you're a UK buyer who wants Panini Premier League Prism, if you have to order it from the States, you'll order it from the States. They know that.
They're probably willing to pay. Like there are examples. Kent and I can attest to this. Like there's products that are available to the UK. Kent and I both have tried to get the baseball product over here. There's in Panini, there's the Asian version, and I'm forgetting the name of it. The Asian version of the
Tmall.
Yeah, Tmall. So like we try to get that as well. So I mean, I always go for what I can't get, right? So there's that. There's actually a question here for you, David. I'm going to bring it up on screen. It's a good friend of mine, Sean Rubb. So he asked, I see a lot of acceptance in the United States of soccer cards, but not stickers, as you mentioned before, as an investment. However, when I discuss soccer cards with people from France or Italy, there's absolutely no acceptance of them. Do you find Europe is not really participating in the soccer card boom? He's just getting your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think, and I live in a bit of an echo chamber with my Twitter feed being filled with European collectors, but they're probably still the exception, and they're still kind of on the leading edge of what is possible. But if North America and Asia are the two biggest markets for it right now, there's just still so much growth potential left in Europe. And what I would say is, if I talked to most of my friends in Canada about any sports cards, they'd probably roll their eyes, unless they're the friends that I've made through sports cards. So it's finding those collector communities, and they can really give you the pulse on how it is actually faring over there. But I know soccer didn't grow by 1,000% in the last year just because of North America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that's across the globe. And then when you look at when eBay released their numbers, two of the fastest growing markets for sports cards in general are Canada and China.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not the US percentage wise. Obviously, they're the biggest share, so for them to go up 200% is nearly impossible. But like in markets like Canada and China and kind of those secondary markets, we'll see it grow there. The UK is certainly, Brexit apparently is causing some challenges there in terms of taxation on them purchasing things from outside of the country. So that'll take a little bit to sort and probably cause a hit to their market. But I think Europe is just kind of catching on. They're familiar with stickers because they've been in their convenience stores for decades. But cards is a new phenomenon, and they're not easy to find yet, right? There's not a culture of a hobby shop, or there's not that many retail products in the same sense. It was stickers, and it was Match Attax from Topps and Adrenaline from Panini. So it's stickers and it's trading card games. That's the traditional view of the hobby for them over there. So there's a learning curve and a re-education, and then just a need to put new, better products in front of them in a way that they can actually get their hands on them.
Do you find, I'm going a bit of a segue here, but there's always that common perception or misconception that, everyone is trying to mimic the West. When it comes to trading cards, do you find that the European markets are kind of singing their own tune, or are they trying to mimic some of the successes that they're seeing from the trading card markets on the West Coast, or West Hemisphere, I should say?
Yeah, a big piece of the puzzle is their influencers at this stage are the same influencers we have over here. So a lot of collectors in Europe, they're following Gary Vee just like the rest of us. And so when he says buy Mbappe, they go buy Mbappe, and they don't really know a whole lot more beyond that. But I think as the community grows, they're going to have their unique spins on some of the things. Especially when you think like these are their leagues, they're their clubs in their backyard, and there's a different attachment that comes through that. In North America, if you were trying to sell out a Prism Premier League break, and if you limited yourself to just North Americans, you might have a hard time selling Brighton or Fulham. But in England, there's thousands of Brighton and Fulham fans, and a few of them just have to like collecting, and you can you'll get a bit of a different landscape there, because like in North America, you'll find the same 20 clubs most people are fans of, unless they come from a family where it's like, well, no, this is our family club, this is who we support, we're from that part of England or that part of Spain, and that's who we cheer for. But otherwise, it's, well, who was on TV, right? How did I become a Manchester United fan as a kid? They were on TV most Saturdays.
Yeah.
I liked them more than Chelsea, who were also on TV a lot most Saturdays. So there wasn't a lot to it other than exposure, and then being like, well, I enjoy a few different players on that team, so it's like, that's my team now.
It's funny because I'm a Liverpool fan, so I mean they have the best chant, but you'll never walk alone. Like that, there's a certain cachet in how they treat their local clubs. So I'm sure they're very passionate. They want to get into their own products, but their own teams. But you mentioned Match Attax a couple times, so that was one of the questions we wanted to ask you. So I appreciate your insight into Futura and Tops and various products. But so Match Attax, can you give us the background on that and how the Match Attax brand has grown over the last I would say 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, category wise, it would fall into trading card game, because I don't know. We'll see if that shows up well enough. You'll see there's numbers and there's stats on there, and apparently there's a game you can play. But just like Pokemon, I've never played the game. Collected the cards, never once learned how to play the game. But it was most people looked at it as a product for kids. Its market share in the UK is gigantic. It is a money-making machine for Tops in that country. There's hundreds of thousands of kids who play the game every year, download the app, and get super involved in it. Collectors, investors, and the more mature audience has a long history of kind of turning up its nose at it, because the numbers make it gimmicky. It's not a clean trading card in a traditional sense. It is a game. It is something a little bit different than what we're kind of comfortable with. But they've been reinventing it a little bit this last year, primarily. So they did Match Attax Chrome. They did autographs inserted in packs in the UK. So here's one that is in my possession. So it's a sticker autograph, but so is almost everything in soccer right now. And So they were pushing packs with that. So if you were a more traditional collector, maybe that would get you interested. Maybe Chrome got you interested because you like everything chromed, because that's what Topps seems to think we're all into. Put Chrome on it and we'll buy it. They're not wrong. Or the last offering, they've added in memorabilia pieces as well. So in select tins, now you can hit patch cards for the first time. The other piece of it, again, the checklist is gigantic. And they do a couple series throughout the year. So there's Match Attax Extra and other things that supplement the checklist. So a lot of people will show up in that product before they show up in anything kind of in the more flagship sets. So you might be able to find someone, their first Match Attax is 2 years earlier than what would be defined as their rookie card.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's value in those cases. And again, a lot of the Match Attax are very condition sensitive. So if you can find a Holland card wearing his Salzburg jersey before he even went to Borussia Dortmund, it's got a black frame on it that's prone to chipping. But if you get one in a high grade condition, well, now you have a valuable card, even though it's a trading card game. But I opened a few packs. Topps introduced me to it a little bit, tried to get me hooked on it. Most of the cards, even the shiny ones, aren't ever going to be much of anything. But there's a few rookies that you put aside and see, 2-3 years down the road, maybe there's something. But it's also important, I think, to remember that I got into hockey card collecting buying Victory, which is a brand without value, even at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get into the hobby if even like Series 1 and Series 2 was the cheapest pack in the store. Because, my budget was Victory or MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And right, that gets me in the door. So if you want people coming into the hobby, you need brands that maybe the more invested collector isn't interested in. We don't need people like me going out and buying out a shop of Match Attax trying to get the hits out of them. We need the next generation of collectors getting into cards through something that they can actually afford.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because now that Topps Match Attax is adding all these exclusives, whether it be mem pieces or autographs, do you think they're kind of taking away the market from the kids now? Because I think the adults are just going to hoard and go out crazy and buy all these stuff because they know they can pull an auto or a mem card.
Yeah, if you're an adult doing that, it's time to shake your head. The reality is, like, when you look, if you opened a box of Match Attax, you will not find one serial number, right? In Match Attax Chrome, which was a special offering, not intended for the kids, it was aimed at people like me. But in regular Match Attax, no numbering. And typically what that means is they can keep on printing and printing and printing until the year is over. So like, you could go out and buy what's in your local store and it'll be back there next week. It'll restock. And the odds on hitting an autograph in it are very, very low. And so maybe you hit the Messi. I haven't seen one surface yet, so that tells you how few there were. But you're more likely to hit Nicholas Otamendi, who you're rightly confused by that name. A lot of the auto checklist isn't Messi. It isn't Ronaldo. It isn't the stickers that Topps know are good value autograph stickers. So they're really cool chases if you were, a 13, 14-year-old who suddenly hit a sweet patch card or hit an autograph for the first time in your life. Like, that might get you hooked. I still remember hitting my first memorabilia in I want to say it was a Series 2 box of Upper Decks. Like, one of my first times ever opening a hobby box. The card is worthless, but I still remember it.
True, fair enough. So Dave, being the astute observer that you are in the soccer space, especially on Twitter, during the recent winter holidays, you being one of them, a few people pointed out a certain young U.S. soccer player by the name of Brendan Aronson, and you could get his autograph card from Parkside Cards that could be had for like $20 plus shipping, which I will, thanks to you, I managed to get one as well. Oop, there we go. Are you surprised at all how much they're reselling for now?
Yeah, I mean, when I bought one, I was like, I'll pay 25 and I'll probably get out at around 100, just because he's a young player with a lot of potential. He's well known in the U.S. market.
Okay.
The print run was only 100. He has no other autographs in existence. So I felt all of that overcomes the fact that nobody knows who Parkside Collectibles are. And so am I surprised they've gone kind of closer to 200 than to 100? Yes. But, I mean, if he starts playing well in Austria, like, it'll get attention. And again, the U.S. has a busy year ahead with World Cup qualifying and then a Gold Cup to play in. So it's likely he'll feature pretty heavily for them. So he'll, those games get the ESPN and the Fox Sports coverage. They get onto the more casual person's radar. So that's where an American can go from kind of like nobody's watching the Australian Bundesliga in the US. But when they're playing in the Europa League, maybe someone's tuning into that. When he's playing for the US national team, they're definitely tuning into that. And so that's where he can make or break his value. That's where you'll see guys who, I mean, might even have less substance to him than him, but more hype, like Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund. He has a big hype machine behind him, but performance-wise hasn't done anything more for me than Aronson has at this point in his career. But it's the just the rise in interest throughout the U.S. I think at this point you can't go wrong picking up U.S. star players because that market's just taking off and will only continue to grow as they have major tournaments coming up.
Now, do you think that has a lot to do with the fact that Puselich was probably the most recognizable U.S. person to play in Europe? Christian Puselich?
Yeah, I think Pulisic is a leading edge of this new generation of them. There's been plenty of Americans who have been successful in the past, but not with the same star power. You're not going to find a whole lot of value in Clint Dempsey, even though he spent a lot of time being a very good Premier League player. It was just in the wrong era, really, from the collectibles perspective. People are more interested in what's the new, the now. Who's the guy who's going to be a star? So you've got a few American options in that. But yeah, Pulisic, Reyna, Aronson, Sergino Dest, who's at Barcelona. There's a few. Weston McKennie, who's at Juventus and co-starring along with Ronaldo. Like, I never saw that one coming, but like there's quite a few Americans who are now in spots where it's like, okay, they could be legitimate contributors playing on the Champions League stage, which again, if people only watch a little bit of soccer, that's probably what they're watching.
Right.
So I've got a question here, which I'll just bring in so you can answer, and then we'll go back to our other questions. So, quick question here, not a question, it's a comment. So the Pele documentary is coming on Netflix tomorrow, and I'm glad this brought up because I was mentioning yesterday I want a Pele auto, although it's eluded me all these days. What do you think this is going to do to the Pele market?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one because the Pele market is a very established market. It's not coming out of nowhere. So when you look at when Tiger Woods kind of got his documentary and the lead up to it, there was quite a ramp up in his cards. but I think there was a lot of room for his cards to ramp up. When it comes to soccer, I mean, Pele's already on the Mount Rushmore, and he's been in quite a few products for quite a few years, but in a limited fashion. I think if you were to look sort of on the market, you'd see a lot more Ronaldo and Messi autographs because they kind of churn those out every year. They're in most products as one of the signers because they move boxes. Pele's been held back a little bit more than that. He doesn't sign everything. I think he signed in quite a bit of Leaf product, which again is okay. Now you're getting into unlicensed stuff, but because it's Pele, the imagery isn't as important either because it's older imagery. So you're mostly just going to be using headshots of him anyhow in a lot of the Leaf designs. So they're the primary source of autographs for him, which means there's not as much on the market as there would be if Panini or Topps was pumping out Pele autographs. And so it'll be interesting because if it creates a demand, there might not be the supply there to meet it in the same way. The other challenge is stuff from his career, like his actual playing days, is so rare and so hard to find because Pele didn't play on the European stage. He didn't play in the Champions League. Maradona went over and played in Napoli, and so he's in all these licensed products before his passing away, where Topps and Panini, we can put Maradona autographs into Chronicles Soccer.
Right.
The Napoli license falls under that for Panini. There's no real product outside of kind of the World Cup products where Pele shows up. So his autograph in World Cup Prism is obviously worth a huge premium because, it can actually feature Brazil colors. It can be proper imagery and everything. But again, there's not a whole lot of them because he played in the old North American Soccer League for the New York Cosmos, and he played at home in Brazil for most of his career. So you're looking at really old stickers and a few other things from his career. So it's just the values are already there because the scarcity is there. Now, the nice thing is he is still with us. He will still continue to sign products going forward. So it's not like it's just going to totally dry up. But I don't ever see them flooding the market. It will probably just keep trickling out for possibly the next couple of decades until it's like, okay, now the supply is all used up. But I think they want to keep a scarcity about him, keep the values up. And in a world where it's like, well, pump it all out, that's a bit of a different approach.
It's funny because Maradona also has a lot of cachet to his name, right? He's got the hand of God, right? There's that. And then there's just Maradona and his infamous career, right? In soccer and outside of soccer. I just watched a documentary on him, and he makes me chuckle because I think he's hilarious outside of the drug problems and stuff. But he made me chuckle like a couple of just interviews with him. He's got that legacy and he's got a lot of that charisma too, right? We have one more question here, which I'm going to bring up here for you, Dave, and then we'll go back to your other questions. Again from Sean Robb. So, do you think? I hope I'm saying the name right. So, Son Heung-min from Tottenham Hotspur could be an important player to collect long term.
Yeah, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but it's the Asian market, and now it's not necessary that Asians are going to collect Asian players. Like they're fans of the same teams that you or I might be fans of. But when it comes to high profile Asian players, potential to star in the next 2 to 3 World Cups, there's not really anybody who I would put above Son on that list. Now, he probably needs to get out of Tottenham to succeed because Tottenham doesn't win things. But Like he's the next star kind of from that region. When you think of who else is collectible, I don't think there's anybody who's going to eclipse him in the coming years. And his cards are a bit of an odd one because he took steps along the way before, like he didn't debut for Tottenham first, right? So he's one where you have to do your research to kind of figure out, okay, what are the right early cards for him. Now he'll have autographs in Prism Premier League coming out next week. And I mean, in terms of a chase, he might just be only behind David Beckham for the most desirable autograph coming out of that product, because he hasn't, like, these will be his first autographs and they're on Prism. So double kind of win there, right?
So besides the obvious young stars that we've talked about tonight, like Holland and Mbappe, that pretty much everyone who's kind of following the soccer market is now aware of, are there any other young stars / rookies that you're currently eyeing? And can you perhaps maybe share with our audience tonight who to be on the lookout for? Like if you can name a couple of players that you have in mind?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what you're looking for in the market. Obviously, there's the guys who you think are going to move on to bigger and better things in the really short term. So right now, Borussia Dortmund is sitting outside of a Champions League place, which would all but guarantee that Holland and his teammate Sancho are both on the way out the door, because they're not going to not play Champions League. They're both already highly sought after anyhow. They would have been hard to hold on to begin with. So if you're looking for people who, you could cash in on this summer, those are obviously two potential guys who could be making high profile transfers. It's not even out of the possibility that Mbappe moves this summer. You're already paying premium prices, but if LeBron James has enough sway to bring him to Liverpool, those premium prices suddenly are already looking like a good investment. But I think if you're looking to go below that, or you're looking to say, okay, maybe I want to spend $10, $20 on a card that I might see going up, I would typically then look at that second tier of leagues. So you're looking at the guys who are in the Bundesliga, maybe guys who are in France, even I'd stay away from England for the most part, because anybody who has a drop of potential has been overhyped. So I wouldn't chase a Mason Greenwood or a Phil Foden in the same way that I might go after someone who has a bit more potential to make an upward move. So best case scenario for Greenwood and Foden is they stay where they are and they do well. So as a long-term play, that might be a good move. But if you're looking, I mean, yeah, in, say, the Netherlands, a Ryan Gravenbach at Ajax Amsterdam, who I think he only has a tops now, but you can get it for a decent price. And maybe that has a chance to grow going forward. Or, if you look in Germany at a Florian Wirtz, who's probably going to be at a bigger club next year. If you think Borussia Dortmund's going to sell their 2-star players, maybe you want to pick up Jude Bellingham and Giovanni Reina, because you figure, well, somebody has to star for them next year.
True, yeah.
Right? I think there's always options if you're willing to kind of do the homework to figure out, okay, who's the young guy who's going to be playing Champions League games, because I think that matters. And we're getting to the point of the year now where watching the transfer rumors to kind of see, okay, who's coming up a lot. Like I did a lot of flipping last summer on ComC just because I read the rumors earlier in the day than the person who bought the card from me later in the day. right? So it's just it's just doing the learning to kind of figure out, okay, who am I interested in? And then deciding, okay, how long is my play with this? Am I tying up $20 for a year and hoping it turns into 100? Okay. Or am I tying up $200 for 6 months and hoping it turns into 1,000? Right? It's again,
Sure.
it's about what you can absorb personally. Like, I'm not buying Mbappe and Holland in quantity
Right.
because it just ties up so much of what I'd rather kind of have free to flow through other things more rapidly. So buying up every kind of rookie who gets a Tops Now Bundesliga this year, and it's like, well, if you buy them at direct from Tops prices, I mean, I'm not risking more than like $5 here. So if they work out and that $5 card becomes a $25 card, that works for me. And that's kind of the arena that I'm more comfortable in. So I've got a lot of Jamal Musiala and Jude Bellingham and Mukoku and a few other guys out of Germany, and I'll sit on those and we'll see what happens. And if they go bust, I don't have to stress because I didn't put $200 onto the card or anything like that, right?
Valid point. What are your thoughts about recognizable women's soccer players? Do you think they'll like gem copies of those? Do you think they'll have the potential to move up the ladder?
I think
Value wise, sorry.
Yeah, I think you got to be realistic about, again, who actually has cards. And when it comes to women's soccer right now, you're mostly looking at the U.S. national team because Panini has done some U.S. team-focused products. Or going back, Upper Deck used to include the previous U.S. Women's Professional League was in their MLS products, so you could get WPS cards in there. So these ladies, especially in the US, are extremely popular. There is huge fan bases for them. And even from a super simple perspective, a lot of collectors who turned into dads have daughters and they want to share it with them as well. And so they might go down that road with it. A lot of US soccer fans just like all US soccer. So there's certain ones that I think are good. You'll see Alex Morgan has her rookie cards in, I think, 2011 type range MLS products. And there's value in those because she's a superstar. There's a huge collectible market for her. But outside of the US, there's just not a lot of existence of cards. So I'm in the market for looking for a Christine Sinclair autograph from those WPS sets that Upper Deck included with their MLS offerings. That's an expensive card because there's so few of them. So it's become a couple $100 because she's the greatest goal scorer of all time, regardless of gender. Yep. She's scored more goals than anybody, right? So there's more demand probably even than there is supply. And if they were to start making more of these products, I think they'd be popular. I think we saw it this year with how the market reacted to the WNBA product.
Oh, sure, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
I think if they built a proper women's soccer product on a recognizable brand, people would buy it.
So we're coming up on the hour mark, so I know we want to be respectful of time. Dave, are you okay to stay for a little bit longer and just kind of show off some of your cards you've collected and so on?
Sure, I'm always fun to show off.
Sure. So I think it's a good way to end it. There's a lot of important information there. We'll definitely have you on again because I'm going to pick your brain for some of the stuff. There's some things you mentioned that I would have not thought of. And I also noticed like some of the things you're talking about from a collectability perspective is a bit different than other sports. So it's neat to learn that. So in honor of your favorite player, so I picked up that Alphonso Davies. You can see it. So that's the optic, right? And then I'll show you another one that's also in honor of you for coming on our show is the other Alphonso Davies.
with his face taped up.
Well, it's going to go to PSA. Sorry, that's a really good point. Just so you know, I'm very anal retentive when it comes to my cards, and as soon as I get them, they're on their way to PSA. So full disclosure, these are going to PSA. I'll save my last two for later. I'll let you go first, Dave. Or second, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start in soccer because that's kind of where we've been hanging out. I mean, a little preempted, but obviously there's the Optic Hollow, which I bought about this time last year for, I mean, significantly less than I paid for this, than I paid for a card for kids, right? It was just the timing of the market. Soccer was still in the COVID break at that point, but as soon as it came back and it's like Alphonso Davies was just shredding defenders on Barcelona and getting onto every highlight reel, it's just everything's gone up, up, up. And I think there's a lot of room where the market still needs to kind of learn on that one, where it's like, okay, not all Davies cards are now gold. And I'm adjusting to, well, no, these are 4th and 5th year cards now. Why are you still treating them like rookie cards? You guys might not remember. But I mean, that's, again, it's not the hockey market I'm used to, where rookies happen in a season. There's a set of rules about it, and we all kind of know what a rookie card is. In soccer, you've got multiple brands, multiple leagues, multiple calendars. It's a little fluid what's a rookie right now. Some brands are being a little fast and loose with what they put a rookie card logo on right now. And when I say some, I mean both Topps and Panini have had some pretty glaringly bad ones in the last year, where it's like, we would all benefit from a system of organization on that one. But yeah, I pulled out a few other hockey cards as well. Here's one from I have a long history of Ottawa Senators PCs that didn't work out. So I was once upon a time a Matt Pumple super collector.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
So I have a shoebox full of really nice autographs and patches and colors and numbered and of Matt Pumple. So, you know, they're not all winners. Another one. Here's that's a Curtis Lazar out of 5. Another PC that just never quite worked out for me as a fan. Really nice kid, but never really made it stick in the NHL. Hopefully things go okay for him in Buffalo now, but yeah, it's another one where it's like they're in a box and they're nice cards, but you know, the value is pretty much gone because of the way his career went. But yeah, then like I mentioned,
you're showing them
off the top, like I mentioned, kind of this era was what I got back into it with. So that's a Spezza. I think that one's out of 3.
That's a nice piece, though. That's a nice piece.
Nice Game Gear one. I mean, this is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's Dominic Hasek. They have not really put out a lot with him with Sens imagery, because that's not the club people kind of attach him with, rightly so. But I mean, that was one for me that absolutely had to own. I mean, a few more recently left us in Ottawa behind. So, you know, Mark Stone, Erik Karlsson, both guys that I collected a little bit of. They were, I mean, Mark Stone is still criminally undervalued, considering he's probably a top 5 winger in this league. He's certainly not top 5 in terms of collectible prices. And even going to Vegas hasn't really helped that. And then obviously the Shabbat collection. I mean, the jersey behind me was worn by him for 2 games of the Memorial Cup that he played in with St. John.
That's awesome.
And then probably my favorite Shabbat card, and obviously this is one of my favorite offerings that Upper Deck has done, period. The Future Watch Auto is already one of the best things they do every year, but the black parallel, the Easter egg of that, probably less than 10 copies of it.
Wow.
Probably the most I've ever spent on a Shabbat card, and absolutely no regret about it. That would be the one card where if I had to get rid of my entire collection, that one's not leaving.
You know, I like your showing. So I tried to mention it earlier, but unfortunately I was talking over you. I like that you're showing PCs that are not necessarily the big shots. So it shows your passion for collecting. It's not just the hottest and latest and greatest player. So I appreciate that. So I like that aspect of it. I love the soccer pieces. We do have a question here that came up from J Card, which is, do you collect vintage soccer cards? And then if I screw the name up, I apologize, but it sounds like Cruyff and Beckenbauer.
So I don't. And again, it's sticking to what I know best. Vintage is a whole other landscape. I think the same will be said for any sport, where it's one thing to collect modern. It's a whole other kind of ball game to try to figure out, okay, what am I doing with vintage? What are the sets to have? So I have modern cards of some of those guys. Like I do own a Cruyff autograph, but it's from the 2000s. It's not kind of from his actual playing career period. And I think if you're looking for something completely untapped, vintage soccer has not taken off in the same way that modern has, or how vintage other things, like other sports, like baseball in particular, have taken off. You can get pre-war soccer sets for, dollars a card or less. And maybe, like, if that's just, I might buy them just because I think they're cool to have something that is that old and that historic. But to people who are willing to put in the time and effort to figure out, okay, what's of value? What's the quality here? What am I actually getting into? I think there's a steep learning curve there, because unlike vintage baseball, I don't think anyone's written the book on vintage soccer. There's certainly some really useful collectors groups that you can find kind of in Facebook and a few other places, where if that's a road you wanted to go down, there's guys who could write the book. They just haven't. But it's definitely not me. It's definitely not where I've kind of built my knowledge base.
For sure. And there's one other question that came up. So Peeps, just so you're aware, David and us and Kent talked earlier, so you really don't collect stickers per se, but I want to just ask this question here. So how do you approach stickers, as they have had a long tradition in both hockey and soccer? Again, I'll let you quickly answer that one, David.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I collect cards, and stickers are a different thing, but I don't turn up my nose at someone who collects stickers. And they're, especially in Europe, when it comes to soccer stickers, there is a long history. There is a nostalgia value, there is a historic value, there's a connection there. So there's a market for stickers. And again, it's another market to educate yourself on, because stickers are a little bit different than cards. They're just offered differently, printed differently, different quality concerns that you're worrying about. So just a whole other landscape to educate yourself in.
Peeps, sorry, I didn't mean that. If I came across a bit stern on that, I didn't mean it that way. I just meant that I wanted to bring it back up, so I apologize if I sounded that way with your question. So definitely no worries asking that question. I'll show a couple more cards while you're at it. So it's I brought this guy out. This is also, yes, he has tape. I know it's tape. So he's going to PSA. It's a serial numbered Ronaldo. And I bought this guy because Kent told me, you told him over Twitter that this guy was good. So I bought this too. So, Kent, did you want to show a couple of your pieces, and then we can get back to yours, David, and then we can do a bit of a wrap up near the end. And I appreciate it a little bit longer.
Sure. One of the ones I had asked and talked about earlier was I actually had a Alex Morgan rookie from 2011 MLS, and I actually got it graded last summer, and it came back gem at 10. So I'm pretty stoked about that. What else we got here? I could show you. I wasn't expecting to get gem at 10 on this, because it's very hard to grade the Panini Obsidian brand. But my Yao Felix Yellow Supernova out of 15 came back Gem Mint 10, which was really cool. Although I know he's getting roasted today because Atletico didn't do very well today. He was getting roasted on the boards there today. Just like you guys, I also have an Alphonso Davies Gem Mint 10, as well as Sancho right there, Gem Mint 10. I've got some Mbappe base optics. Whoops. There we go. A couple of those. But the big one is the optic orange refractor to 99 of Mbappe, which is out of 9. And then I've got some Messi's like everybody else has, but this Fuego super short print that came out of Chronicles, that gemmed, actually gemmed at 10. But the big one for me, and I pulled this card, was the Erling Haaland out of Topps Finest, out of orange refractor out of 50. And that came back mint 9. So that there is a very special card and expensive card right now.
Yep.
I love how Kent just came out and destroyed the both of us with his
I didn't destroy you guys.
I'll just wait till the end, and I'll just okay. Well, we can't touch Kent unless if this is a video game or a game. I send it back to you, David. You gotta one up him somehow.
I gotta one up him somehow. I mean, part of the challenge is a lot of my Davies collection is either sitting in ComC, sitting at a friend's parents' house because combining shipping, or is currently off for grading. But I have a few other things. This is not just a trading card game, but these are actually attached to it's essentially a video game out of Japan. So, I mean, they were just a cool, interesting looking card. I bought them to kind of just learn about them. But like this card would let you get Davies in your team with those stats. So there's it's big in Japan. I don't know a whole lot more about it yet, but it was a fun one to have. Again, trading card game, but had to have the Canadian flag in the background, so that made it just significantly more appealing to me.
For sure.
Yeah, the rated rookie and the red press proof is another.
I like that one because it matches his jersey, the border.
Yeah, it's a nice effect that they do on them, right? And then there's another one, just team of the year. So that's another one of those little on-demand sets. But I think this one had a print run of under 600.
Wow.
So I mean, it's not a rookie or anything, but a limited run, which is nice. And
it's in an Ultra Pro, so that's heading south.
It arrived in that. It hasn't been taken out, so it hasn't been decided on what it's doing yet. So it's a little up in the air. The other ones need to come home before I decide if anybody else is going off for slabbing. But I can't beat Ken with any of the soccer cards I have within reach. But I do have a couple other Shabbats, so I can go bigger on hockey. So there's one of my nicer Shabbat patches. I think that one's out of 15 or 10. Yeah. It's low. And then, I can go Super Fractor.
Awesome.
There you go. So there's Golden Treasures, 1 of 1 Shabbat rookie card. And that's one of those. That card's an example of if you have a well-known brand, that card got into my Twitter DMs before it ever hit any sort of public marketplace or anything. All I had to do was make a fair offer, and that one was mine. So there's the value.
I'll tell you something funny about that. So I'm trying to collect those cards, right? There's another friend of mine who also is trying to collect those cards. So when I saw that, my heart jumped. I'm like, okay, that's one less one to look at.
Yep, that one has never hit the market, and it never will publicly. Unless something has badly happened to me.
See, there's my good friend Jeremy. He has more Golden Treasures than I do. I have one. He has more than one, but both our collective hearts are like, is that what I think it is? I did that too. I looked at it and like, oh, we're gonna have to talk later.
See if I can reach this one.
Um, I'll let you show. You're going to show something, and then we'll.
What?
Oh man, another one!
It doesn't end at 1.
Oh, geez.
This one's not a rookie. It's a Pajot from the same year, but
Oh man, there's 2 off the market. Okay, well, Jeremy, we know there's 2 we're not going to get. I have to bring him back up.
cross them off the
Jeremy,
list.
at least I exposed 2 that we wouldn't have seen otherwise.
No, because that's another one where a friend hit it, I think, on the EPAC platform, and it was in my possession before the world ever had a shot at it.
I'm doing it all wrong. I'm on Instagram and I'm not on it enough. I need to promote myself more. But then again, I don't want to over promote myself because then people will hold me for ransom. And I don't want that either. So you know what? I'm okay being a bit of a silence on it. But
That
man,
is
2? You have 2 of them?
that is the mixed bag of it, because there is a certain card that goes in the rainbow with that Shabbat Golden Treasures that I haven't been able to get because I think there's a bit of someone knows how bad I want it.
Yeah.
And they know that I'm a captive buyer. I either have to meet their price or be okay with my incomplete rainbow.
You know, I have the mindset, and this is completely a different topic, and I think Kent will agree. If they want a card that badly, they can die with it. I don't need it. Oh, look, Dave Panopoulos showed up. Here you go. He had the Pajot. There we go. So we know where David's allegiance goes. The 2 Davids are thick as thieves.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why that one won't leave, because it came from a friend. So it's got the extra sentimental attachment, right?
D-Pan, I'm looking at you, man. I'm looking at you. There's some cards I want from you. I'm coming after you, man. I'm going to follow your Twitter feed. I'm actually... Just for the record, I can't stand Twitter. I'm not on Twitter very often. Kent is on Twitter more than I do, and there's way more action on Twitter, so I should join. But D-Pan, I'm looking out for you, man. I know we're at 1 hour and 21 minutes, and I want to make sure we're being respectful of your time. David, you've been an awesome guest. I learned a lot about the footy collecting. I love listening about your collecting of the Senators. I love that you showed cards that aren't PC cards, major PC cards. They're like your favorite team cards, and it may not be like the biggest player. So I'm totally open for that. D-Pan, please don't tempt me, man. I'm gonna join Twitter today, and I'm gonna follow you right away. But long story short, I want to thank you again for showing up, and for showing up. That sounds terrible. Thank you again for coming on our show, and I really appreciate it. I want to have you on again. You were an awesome guest and learned a lot about it. I'm going to have to rewatch my own show to make sure I pick out some of those names, and some names I hadn't even heard of. Just for everyone else who's watching the show, thank you for joining. Next show, we'll have a very famous artist by the name of Tim Carroll on March 2nd. He'll be coming into our show, so we'll be promoting that. I'm really looking forward to that. But again, if there's any last questions or comments or roasting for David, please let him know. He's not a Liverpool fan, or you can roast me. It's up to you. I'm a Leafs fan. He's a Senators fan, but we're all about one love. So and hanging out and having fun. Cool. Another Erling Holland here from Peeps. We got Marlene Golick thing. Thanks, guys. So, any last comments you want to make, Kent? And if not, any last comments you want to make, David? If not, then we'll cap it there.
I'm good. But we should always ask our guests that one question before we let them go. So, I'll throw it over to you.
Oh, that is a very good point. I got so wrapped up in our rivalry, I forgot. So. Before we leave, it is a good way to end the show. So what inspires you? I want to know what inspires you, David. What motivates you and inspires you to continue do what you do?
Boredom? No. So, not the right answer, but I mean, I got back into cards in a less than favorable stage in my life and found a bit of a community. D-Pan's been chiming in. But our friendship only exists because we kind of bonded over pictures of men on cardboard.
Right.
And so kind of that community that's been built out of it, it does keep me coming back. You know, I have a wife and a kid now, so the budget and the way that I go about it is certainly different than it used to be. My goal this year is to be net zero spend. So, you know, I got to sell that Aronson auto if I want to buy a Davies auto, right? Like that's just kind of what I'm trying to make work this year. But it's always finding new things to be learning about, stay interested in, and just having people to actually share that interest with. And I'm sure like me getting back more into soccer cards is probably to blame for D-Pan getting more into soccer cards again, right? So it kind of, we pull each other in those directions. And
Sorry we lost you there, but I just wanted to make sure you got the chance to finish your last comment.
I think I dropped off mid-sentence. I put a period there. I don't think you lost me.
Right, no worries.
Cool. Well, again, thank you very much for everyone who's joining. We're going to sign it off here. David, just hang out at the end, and we'll just cap sign off after.
Okay, thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it. We'll see you again next week.